Hello Story Detectives, and welcome to video 4 of Papa Please Get the Moon for Me. And this is the video where I will explain the sort of answers that I would have expected from your worksheets. So let's have a look, let's start. The word of the week was sliver, and I have written here a meaning it's a slender piece of something. So like we could have a sliver of pizza, that would be a slender piece, a thin piece of something. And a synonym would be fragment. We can have a few synonyms we had on our other video, such as slice or shred, but I've used the word fragment there. And an antonym here, I've used the word whole. You could have used all or full, but I've used whole because it's kind of reminding me of a pizza where you've got the whole pizza or just a fragment or a sliver. And my sentence I have written, I ate all the chocolate cake. There wasn't even a sliver left. Yes, that is the kind of thing that I might do. Eat all the chocolate cake and not even leave a sliver for anybody else. Right, now I'm looking forward to hearing your stories here about why we've had that Monica wanted to touch the moon. Sorry, there's a typo there. I did correct it on your sheet, I think. And what would you do if you had if you could attempt to touch the moon? So I'm looking forward to seeing your stories there. And then a quick look at this story map. The characters in the book were Monica, her papa, and the moon. The moon was actually also a character in this book. It actually sort of spoke to us. So I'm going to put that down as one of the characters. The setting is a bit vague where this is, but we're in Monica's house and garden at one point and in the sky at another point. So we don't really know where it is, but we're going to guess like somewhere around Monica's home. So the beginning, I've just written here, Monica wants the moon. Dad tries to get it for her, and then in the middle, Dad gets the moon, and Monica plays with it until it disappears. And at the end, the moon reappears in the sky. So if you've got something along those lines, then well done. Now the compare and contrast. The two books that we've done over the last 2 weeks definitely had a lot of things in common. So I've just picked out a few points here because we don't have a huge amount of room on our Venn diagram. So I've just picked out a couple of points. And I'd like to see, hopefully you've got, say, 3 or 4 points on your Venn diagram as well. So let's just have a quick look. I put here in the, do you know what? I think I've written the right way around, sorry. In the book of How to Catch a Star, the main character, and the only character in that book is a boy. But in the moon story, the Papa Please Get the Moon for Me, the main character is a girl and she has help from her dad. And actually the moon is also a character. I should have written that too. Moon is a character too because he talks. Oops. In the star book, the star isn't exactly a character. It doesn't really say anything. So it's just really the boy in that story. But we do have several other characters. And of course the main character is the boy in one story. It's the girl in the other. And then when we've got the star story, we've got the star doesn't really come down to earth. The boy sort of thinks it is, but we think it is a starfish. But in our Papa Please Get the Moon for Me, the moon actually talks and he comes down to earth. So this one is kind of more of a fantasy story because that couldn't really happen. But in the story, the moon actually comes down to earth and the little girl plays with the moon. Then in the star book, we had that the boy had several ways to try and reach the star. He thought about going up into a rocket. He tried to climb a tree. He was hoping it would fall into the water. But in the story about the moon, the dad gets the moon on his first attempt. It's very easy. He just gets a ladder, climbs up a mountain, and there we go. So again, this story is a lot more of a fantasy story. But what do they both have in common? Well, the main thing is that we have a child in the story who wants to play with something in space. And that's not something that you hear every day. You don't often hear of children saying, can I play with a moon or stars? So that's definitely something that the two stories have in common. And then they also both get their wish at the end. So both of the children in their own ways get what they wanted. The boy gets a starfish, which he assumes is the star, and the girl does get to play with the moon for a while, and then it goes back up into the sky. Now, which of these two books was your favourite? I'm looking forward to hearing what you say there. I find it really tricky because I love both books. I like the way Oliver Jeffers does his illustrations. I think they're really sweet. But I have got a soft spot, I must admit, for Papa Please Get the Moon for Me. So I've written here, I like both books. I prefer Papa Please Get the Moon for Me because I like how the dad helps his daughter. I think that's really sweet how the dad helps his little girl. And also a silly reason, but you can write whatever you like here. My mum's middle name is Monica, so I quite like the book because it's my mum's middle name is Monica as well. So it makes me think of my family. So that's why I like that book. But when you like a book or dislike a book, you can have any reason you like. It doesn't have to be a particularly sensible reason. It can just be something about the way you feel. And that so can explain to us why some things we like more than others. So if you've got a funny reason there, like you like the character drawings in one or you like the colours in another, that's absolutely fine. There's nobody can tell you which book you prefer. Only you can tell us how you feel about a book. So if you have a funny reason, you can explain that too. Then the comprehension questions. So I've just written some answers in here. Why did Monica want the moon? Well, she wanted to play with it. That's what we were told. What object did Papa use first to try and get the moon? He got a ladder. How did he reach the moon? Well, he put the ladder on a tall mountain. And funnily enough, that was high enough to reach. Why couldn't Papa carry the moon to Monica? Well, first of all, it was too big. So the moon told him to wait, didn't he, until he got small enough. So how did he finally get the moon for Monica? He had to wait until it got small enough, and then he could carry it down that ladder. What did Monica do when she got the moon? Well, she played, she jumped, she danced, she threw it in the air, she caught it, and she gave it a hug. Not necessarily in that order, but they're all the things that she did when she got the moon. What happened to the moon and why? Well, it eventually got smaller and then it disappeared. Was the moon gone forever? No, it reappeared in the sky and gradually got bigger. So I hope you've got some answers along those lines for your comprehension. Now, the research part. I hope you had a look at those videos because they explain this very nicely. But I'm just going to go through. I've just drawn a picture here. You could have drawn some sentences if you wanted to draw a picture. The reason I've drawn a picture is just so I can sort of explain this to you. This is just from one of the videos. Basically, we have the moon, and it doesn't have its own light source, the moon. So it's not like the sun, which lights up in the sky. It just reflects the sun. So it's kind of like a big mirror. So if the moon is facing the sun, we can see the whole moon. And if it's got its back to the sun, in between us and the sun, then we can't see it at all because it's not reflecting any of the sun's light. So the moon orbits the earth. So if this is the earth here, the moon goes around the earth. And it takes about 29.5 days, according to one of the videos I watched, to go all the way around the earth. So as it goes around the earth, it's in between the earth and the sun at different points in the light. So our first phase is called a new moon, and that's when there's nothing that we can't see anything. The sun will be shining in this direction where my pencil is, and this is the earth here. And basically the sun, the moon is kind of blocking the sun. We can't see any of the light because it can't reflect on the sun. The sunlight can't reflect back from the moon. Then it moves into its waxing crescent. So that's the second phase. So the new moon is when we can't see it. The waxing crescent is when we have a tiny sliver of moon on this side. And that's now because it's moving and we can have a little bit of a reflection from the sunlight onto the moon. So the first phase is the new moon, then the waxing crescent. Then we have what we call the first quarter. I think of this as like a half moon, but technically you're seeing a quarter of the moon because the other half's on the other side. So that's called the first quarter. Then we have what we call the waxing gibbous, and that's nearly a full moon, but not quite. And the word waxing means getting bigger. So as the waxing phase is as the moon is getting bigger. Then we have the moon as a full moon. Did I not write that there? Sorry, full moon here. Which is when we can see the most of the moon because the sun is shining on the moon and it's reflecting the sunlight back to us. So that is called the full moon. Then it gradually gets smaller going in the other direction. So the word waxing meant getting bigger. The word waning means getting smaller. So we have our waning gibbous, which is where it's not quite the full moon. Then we have our last quarter, which if you can see there, it's the other side of the, oops, can you see that there? So on the first quarter we can see this side, and on the last quarter we see the other side of the moon. And then finally the waning crescent. So there are actually 8 cycles, and then we go 8 phases, sorry, then we go back to the beginning of the cycle with the new moon. So it's about 29.5 days, so that means each phase is 3 or 4 days long. So if you have anything like that, then give yourselves a pat on the back. And even if you didn't write anything, as long as you've watched those videos and learned a little bit more about the phases of the moon, then that is brilliant. I think the first video link that I put up there probably was the most detailed, but they all had a little bit of information that would have been useful for you. So have a look at those if you can. And then our word skills. Now, we had a very big look last week at comparative and superlative adjectives. And one of the ones we're looking at today is the comparative. So that's when we're comparing just 2 things. So our example sentence here is Bob is taller, thinner, more intelligent, wiser, funnier, and better than Bill. Each of those words has been made into a comparative in a slightly different way. So taller, we just added the ER. Thinner, we added an extra N, then ER. When we've got a long word like intelligent, we don't add an ER at the end, we just say more intelligent. Wiser ended in an E already, so we just had to add on an R to that word. Funny, we changed the Y to an I and add an ER. And then the word good became better. That's just an irregular that you have to learn. That changes altogether completely to a different word. So we say good, better, and then the best. So can we find any comparative adjectives in Papa, Please Get the Moon for Me? Well, there's one that's repeated a lot. It's not repeated in exactly comparing 2 things, but we are comparing the moon to itself. It gets smaller. So we have that word several times during the book. Let me just look on here. So the moon got smaller and smaller and smaller. So we're comparing the moon to itself in this case. We're not comparing 2 things, but we're comparing it to how it was before. So it got smaller and smaller. And then it doesn't say this, but then when it was at its smallest would be the superlative adjective. So writing 2 sentences just to compare a moon and a star. So I've just written here, the moon looks bigger than a star because it is nearer to the earth. So I've got 2 comparative adjectives there. I've got bigger, so that's big, bigger, the biggest, and nearer. So you could have something near, something nearer, and then you'd have the nearest. So we're just comparing 2 things, so we just need the ER, the comparative. So that's saying that the moon looks bigger. Moon isn't actually bigger, the stars are actually bigger, but it looks bigger to us because it is nearer to the earth. And then I wanted to put in a slightly more irregular adjective here. So I have just written, and this is just my opinion, stars are more beautiful than the moon, but I think the moon is more magical than stars. So I wonder if what you've got for there. I've got this, instead of saying, you wouldn't say beautifuler, you would say more beautiful, and again, magical, you wouldn't say magicaler, you say more magical. I think there's something very magical about the moon, but I do think stars are very beautiful when they twinkle in the sky. So that's what I've got for those answers. Now, let's have a look. We have got the words here. Match the words. So moon is there, mountain is there, hug is